What's the most screw-up thing you did in a sleepover? Story 1. Played with matches. For years afterward, thought I'd burned my aunt and uncle's house down. I was staying with them. My cousin and I were lighting matches in the kitchen and throwing them in the sink to put them out. The head of one flew off and landed in the shelving unit by the sink, still smoking, but when we looked for it, we couldn't find it. It was the 80s, so all those kids don't play with matches ads were everywhere. Hours later, we were awakened by my aunt telling us to get out of the house because it was on fire. Watched their house burn to the ground, and was terrified to tell them what we'd been doing earlier. I just knew we'd done it. Carried that guilt for years. When I was around 15-ish, which was many years later, I finally told my aunt. She started laughing, and after realizing I'd been thinking this the whole time, hugged me and explained it had been wiring in the back bedroom. I was an adult before I finally understood, after learning about how fire marshals investigate fires, that it wasn't just an assumption they'd made and could let go of that guilt. So I guess, technically, the most screwed up thing I did on a sleepover was traumatize myself for years. Story 2. Got a bloody nose. It was dark and I didn't know the house, so I stuck near the walls and went down the hallway and found the bathroom. Got the bleeding to stop, cleaned up, went back to sleep. In the morning, the mom came in frantic, making sure everyone was alive after she saw smeared bloody handprints all the way down the hallway. Story 3. We were all like 9 or 10-year-old girls, and everyone else had fallen asleep except for me, so I decided I would play a prank on them. I got up and shook a good amount of black pepper into my hand, and went to several of the girls and held it under their noses. What I was thinking would happen was they would wake up sneezing, and be like, hey, that was silly. But instead they ended up waking up crying because they inhaled pepper. And turns out black pepper being inhaled into a sensitive orifice can really fucking sting. The girls cried so hard that my parents woke up, and I had to explain the whole innocent idea behind my scheme. I felt so bad. Story 4. In Boy Scouts, I was the morning cook, meaning I woke up before anyone else to chop wood, make fire, and get water boiling. I grabbed the hatchet and started splitting a log into little splinters for kindling. It was cold and dewy. The hatchet slipped from my hand mid-upward swing and went flying to the tent circle. It seriously flew 10 to 15 yards and fell straight down though the roof of a tent where for scouts were sound asleep. I'm not sure how long I waited to hear someone start screaming. I probably sat there in terrified anticipation for over a minute. Then I was worried someone might be hurt, so I crawled over to that tent where the hatchet landed. I super quietly unzipped the flap, and saw it landed in a bag of clothes very close to some kid's head. I snuck in, grabbed the hatchet, left the tent, zipped it back up, and finished breakfast. I heard them at breakfast complaining that the raccoons has ruined their perfectly nice tent by clawing a hole in it. Story 5. I got my first period at a sleepover. And lucky for me, the first year of periods came with wicked vomiting and diarrhea. So in the middle of the night, right after everyone fell asleep, I destroyed my friend's bathroom with a volcanic amount of diarrhea. Then, on my way back to the living room where 5 preteen girls were crammed, I proceeded to vomit directly between 2 girls sleeping. I had to ask the mom for help with cleaning up the mess. Story 6. More embarrassing than foo-up. Accidentally clogged the toilet at friend X's house. There was no plunger and the toilet was filling rapidly. I panicked and ran to my friend, who promptly called for his dad. His dad takes one look and yells from the bathroom, "Jesus, X, how big of a shit did you take?" It took years before I went back to his house. Story 7. We found craft singles in the fridge and put one over the nose and mouth of a friend of ours who fell asleep on the couch before everyone else. It immediately softened and molded into a cheesy seal over his face, and he stopped breathing. We all freaked out for a solid 10 seconds, very quietly, until we heard him make a chewing sound. Mother F smelled cheese and took immediate action despite being unable to breathe, and just straight up ate a mouth-sized hole into the single unconsciously. We then proceeded to plaster the entire package onto his face one at a time. and watch him hoover up the cheese slices in order to not die. Story 8. This is not the weirdest thing, but something that has always stuck out to me. Had a girl tell me that she knew someone who did it by holding themselves up at the top of a door and basically doing pull-ups against the door to get off. She even demonstrated it for me. Then she took a very long shower with a detachable shower head. She came out silent and out of it for a bit. It didn't occur to me until a few years later that she had the most defined arms out of anyone I knew at the time who was our age. I remember thinking that was weird since she played soccer, but her upper body was ripped. Also, no one would make that up and say it was their friend because it was so strange, and she was wide to good at it. I tried after her thinking, sweet a new way to get off, but I could only raise my body a few times anyways. Girl got off from the corner of her closet door by doing pull-ups. Story 9. I peed on my friend's couch during a sleepover. I was 10, kinda old to pee the bed, I know. I woke up in a panic, of course, but discovered the couch cushions weren't sewed to the couch and they were identical on both sides. So I flipped that shit, changed into a spare pair of shorts, and went to sleep. A year later, while I was at that friend's house, his mom discovered my huge yellow piss stain on the bottom of a couch cushion. Of course, she didn't suspect me. My friend's little sister took the heat. It was me, Mrs. Schofield. I pissed on your couch and let it soak for a year. Story 10. So, I have a history of sleep talking, walking issues, and they're especially heightened when I'm stressed. I don't like being away from home, so sleepovers are a recipe for disaster for me. Lo and behold, I woke up one morning after my first sleepover to the horrifying news from my friend that I started sleepwalking, yelled karate chop over and proceeded to ruthlessly swing my arms into my friend's stomach, effectively waking her up out of dead sleep. We were 8. This was the first time I slept over her house, and I had never told her about my sleepwalking problems. She still makes fun of me about it to this day. Story 11. I had a sleepover at a friend's house. Pre-teen boys, so we were stuffed in one little bed. I got a nosebleed but slept through it for about an hour. I noticed eventually and got up to tend to it. My friend woke up while I was in the bathroom to what looked like a scene from a horror movie. I did not get a second sleepover. Story 12. When I was a stupid kid, I got invited for a sleepover. It was a few of us and we would be going paintballing the next day through generosity of the host and his parents. Now I knew most of them from my school, but was really only good friends with one, and he had suggested they invite me, as he knows I like to paintball. In the night time when we were all in the living room being loud and dumb kids, I stupidly said the host name was probably upstairs of his mom. Everyone bust out into laughter. Well, I said it loud enough that they heard upstairs as well, and his mom wasn't very happy. The next day it was brought up, and they completely blamed the wrong person. I never said a word about how it was me. That was maybe 10 or 11 years ago, and I still think about it, lol. It was so rude and unnecessary. I wish someone had ousted me. But you live and you learn. Story 13. I was carrying a bottle of vodka that I'd bought unopened, and we had already had a good few drinks when I dropped it and it smashed on a nail. She had nailed into the carpet of her living room. Shattered everywhere, and I had a panic attack in the corner instead of helping to clean up. Then had a subsequent drunken breakdown because I didn't help her clean it up until the end, where I accidentally cut myself and she had to deal with that too. At least it was my bottle, I guess. Story 14. We used to do this thing called porch swapping. This is where we'd take the furniture off one porch, I'm talking the entire set. We'd then haul it down a few houses and set it up on a different porch. We would take clothes from one line and put them mixed in on another line. I don't know why. Story 15. In the mid-late 90s, my brother got really into the anarchist's cookbook and learned how to tap into neighbors' landlines from a box on the pole using a touch-tone phone and some connectors from Radio Shack. We'd have friends sleep over, we are close in age, and we'd sneak out and he'd hook a phone up so we could call phone S lines from outside a neighbor's house in the bushes. I still wonder if they disputed the charges. Or if the wife just thought the husband was calling Big Orange at 2 a.m. Story 16. Got hammered at the bar and slept over at this couple's house. I never got the tour, so didn't know where the bathroom was. I woke up having to puke and shit. I alternated, but I got shit and puke everywhere. They didn't have toilet paper, so I used a bag of cotton balls, which wouldn't flush. So I put all the wet cotton balls back in the original bag with my shit-covered underwear, and threw the bag away in their kitchen trash can. Their dog was watching me the entire time. I left before they got up and never spoke to them again. Story 17. First sleepover with boys and girls was like 17. And no parents about, didn't do anything. But woke up in the morning with all my mates laughing at me, and none of the girls talking to me. Turns out that a girl who I'd been flirting with and kissing the night before had come to wake me up in the middle of the night, no idea why. I prefer to assume it was to say mean things to me, and in my sleep I had full-on punched her smack bang in the face. I was so confused waking up. Everyone was mad at me. No girl would even speak to me. It took a week until someone told me what I had apparently done. Still cringe at it to this day. Story 18. We got drunk and went streaking on the beach at night. We were all guys, it just seemed like the thing to do. One of my friends couldn't find his clothes after returning from the ocean, but had a change of clothes at the friend's house. We left him on the pitch-black beach naked, and vowed we would return and find him with his clothes. Well, we had to screw with him. It's what grade school guys did. So we waited a couple hours at the house, and then ventured out to him. The guy was pissed. He had encountered multiple midnight walker tourists and had to retreat into the ocean to avoid being seen. We laughed our asses off and played Super Nintendo games until the sun rose. We went back out to the beach and never found his first set of clothes. But that was 24 years ago, and we laugh about it to this day.